what's going on? This is Meeples on the Ground. I'm Nick, and this is Sarah.
Hey!
So today we want to talk about promos, and not just any promos that we have enjoyed getting for games that we like. And so we've got a little compiled list of ones that have stood out to us. There are a lot of promos for a lot of games, and some are good, some are like, what is this? But right now we're going to go ahead and talk about our kind of like top picks. And also, at the end of the video, we're actually be giving away some promos. So stay tuned for that later. Alright, so let's get into it. What is our first one?
Well, so promos are like one of my favorite ways to sort of enhance a game.
Yeah.
And we are specifically going to be talking about promos. We're not going to be talking about upgrades or items that we feel are a promotional item so large that it's really more of a game upgrade than like a small card or figure or something like that. We also love to upgrade our games, and we have lots of upgraded items in our games as well, but we're sticking with just like promotional items for this list.
It's hard to keep the list kind of separated.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I like this. That actually was an upgrade. It's like, oh.
We've recently ordered some upgrades and promos from Board Game Geek's Geek Up store, I believe is what it's called. And what I did was I turned around and sold some promos that I had some excess of. I have a monthly send away club where you can be like a subscriber to the club, and then every month or quarterly I send you a selection of promos. And I had some like sort of overstock on that, so I've recently sold or traded some of those, and it's gone really well. So we turned around and used some of the money that we got from that to buy some new promos and upgrades.
Just swapping out promos.
Just for ourselves. And so we have some stuff coming from the Board Game Geek store, and I'm really excited about some of those upgrades and promos that we have. We picked out some that we wanted to include in our games, but I also picked out some for Christmas stockings, so we won't be talking about those. But one of the ones that I'm excited about that we both know about is the Civilized promo for Downforce. So Downforce is a car racing game where you have a selection of cars that you are responsible for in a race. And if you can get your cars to finish in the top 3, you make more money than anybody else.
Or in the higher places. I think the only one that doesn't get you any money is last place.
If
but you still get some money for
if you come in last, you don't get any money, but every place above last, you get at least a little bit. But obviously, top 3 is going to be like where you want to be.
Where your money really
where you're going to get the most money. And you can actually make money in the game if your cars are in the top 3. Well, if your cars finish in the top 5, you make money. But you also make money if you at certain points of the game guess correctly which cars are actually going to come in first, second, third, fourth kind of thing. So it doesn't necessarily have to be your car that comes in first. And if you were really betting that another car might come in first, you might actually not want your car to come in first, which is an interesting part of the strategy. But anyway, we got a new promo. One of the things that we ordered was a promo for Downforce called Civilized. And the Civilized promo is like a trait that you add to one of the players at the beginning of the game. There's an initial draft phase, and you get to draft these sort of like traits that each player gets to use throughout the game. And the Civilized one says, on your turn, you may choose a car on the car that you play to be able to move the cars around. You may choose a car on that card owned by another player. And if you do, they get to move that car before any of the other cars on that card. And I thought that was kind of a cool promo, because the way that Downforce works is you have a hand of cards and you play a card, and whatever cars are listed on that card, you have to move those cards in order. And sometimes you're like, man, if I could just get that one car out of the way, then my cars could get ahead. So with the Civilized trait, I think that's going to be a really cool way to address those kind of sticky situations where you have a really great card if that one card just wasn't where it is. So I think that's going to be a really fun promo to add to our Downforce game.
Yeah, and it's also going to add another card. So with adding another card, you're going to kind of rotate some of the cards because every card that you bet on has an ability along with it.
Now, and there are no extras. So like you use every single one every single game. but now we'll have an extra. So maybe we'll see a little bit more variety.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of the game and what stays in the game. Because there's some cards I'm like, man, this would be really nice if I didn't have to deal with it. But we'll see.
And I think too, like by having just even one extra trait, we could even do like a random discard at the beginning, so that like we don't get to see what gets discarded, and then we just kind of have to deal with what's left. And it's a really small tweak, right? But I think it'll increase the replayability, at least some. So.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's one of the ones that we ordered. The rest of the ones that we're talking about today are ones that we already have in our collection, and ones that either one or both of us really, really like or appreciate what it brings to the game or that kind of thing. Do you want to talk about anyone in particular?
I'll just go down.
Just kind of go down the list.
Yeah, kind of go down the list.
Well, one of my favorite promos, and honestly probably one of my favorite board game related things that we own, is a signed copy of the Dire Wolf promo for the game Clank. I personally actually don't really like what the card itself does, but I got the pleasure of meeting Paul Denon at a show, I don't know, sometime in the last few years. He's the designer of Clank. Clank is one of my all-time favorite games. Really, really love it. And I got the pleasure of meeting him and just chatting with him about Clank and about some of the expansions and the content and like his inspiration behind the game. And just we had a really, really nice discussion. He was so friendly and down to earth. And I took up like 10 or 15 minutes of his time just chatting with him. But he made me feel like that was perfectly acceptable. Like I wasn't putting him out or inconveniencing him or anything like that. So he was really, really pleasant to speak with. And it was really fun for me to just kind of get the chance to chat with him. And the reason that I had went to the booth was because I heard that they were giving out promos for Clank. I didn't even know that he was going to be there. And so when I went over there and he was there, I was really excited at the chance to get to talk with him. And before I left, he was like, well, is there anything I can help you with or anything like that? And I said, I actually came over to get some promos for Clank. And so he went and he got me like one of all the promos they were giving away. And I asked him, I was like, can I ask you to sign one for me? Just because, I really like your game and this was really cool meeting you and stuff like that. And he was like, yeah, which one do you want me to sign? And I didn't know which one to ask him to sign. So I was like, well, which one is your favorite? And he said that the Dire Wolf promo was his favorite. So I asked him to sign that one for me. So he did, and we have it in like a card protector in the box.
I think we got two because one signed.
Yeah, he asked me, he was like, well, if I sign this one, like, are you going to want to put it in your game? I said, honestly, no. And he said, okay, well, I'll sign one for you, and then I'll give you like another one, and you can put that one in your game. Super friendly, super, super nice. So he signed one for me, and we put it in like a card protector, and it's in our Clank box, and it's just kind of like something that every once in a while, I'm like, isn't this cool? And I got to like reminisce about the time that I got to meet him and chat with him and how much fun that was for me. So that's probably one of my favorite promotional items that we own is the Dire Wolf for Clank.
Awesome. So next one is Sagrada. Now Sagrada had, I think about, 3 to 6?
They have quite a few, yeah. They have, they do like licensing deals with like media groups or media personalities, like the Rodney from Watch It Played. They did one from Man vs. Meeple, one from Dice Tower. So they have like a series of promos. And then I think they have some that are even like not even partnership type promos. But they have, I would say, at least half a dozen promos.
And just the orientations that come within the game, because it's kind of like a puzzly dice game. So all of a sudden you get these new promos that don't just add like a new look to it, but also add some new puzzly type challenges within the game, which is really cool.
The next one is we have a little Santa for our Settlers of Catan game. And this was kind of a neat thing that Catan Studios put out a few years back, where they actually came out with these Christmas cards that you could purchase and mail to people for Christmas. But they included a hex that represented Santa's workshop. So it's like snowy and there's a little workshop tile on it. And then a little punch out standee of Santa, and some little tiny tokens which look like gifts. They're these little punchboard tokens that look like gifts. And what you do is you swap out the desert hex for the Santa's Workshop hex, and he goes there instead of the robber, and you just don't play with the robber. And when you roll a 7, normally you would move the robber somewhere, and it would sort of hamper progress for the people whose hex you had placed the Santa on. I'm sorry, the robber on. But for the Santa one, when a 7 is rolled, you can place the Santa the same way that you place the robber, but instead of hampering the people who own property on that hex, it actually allows them to get gifts from Santa every time a 7 is rolled. Or I'm sorry, every time that number would be rolled. And when you get a certain number of gifts from Santa, I don't remember exactly how many, but when you get a certain number of gifts from Santa, you can use them as like a wild resource. So it's kind of a friendlier, nicer, definitely more in the spirit of Christmas sort of expansion for Catan. And it's just kind of cool to see, such a well-known figure as Santa Claus sort of integrated into a land that is completely abstract from our reality.
Yeah, awesome. So next is Rajas. I don't know too much of the Rajas promos, but Sarah loves the game.
Yeah, Rajas is a really neat dice drafting game where you draft and use dice sort of as resources to get what you need for this worker placement game. And R&R Games has put out a lot of promos for Rajas, and there's some really cool ones. I believe earlier this year or maybe late last year, they put out a goodie box, the Rajas Goodie Box 1. And it contained all of the promos up to that time that had ever been made for the game. So if you were trying to, collect these promos, or if you didn't have any of them and you're interested in getting them, you could just get one goodie box and it had all the promos in there. Which I appreciate because as someone who does sort of hunt promos, sometimes it can be frustrating or disappointing if you're looking for a specific one, or if you find out that there's a bunch for a game and you don't have very many or any of them, it can be kind of hard to find them. So it's really nice when they're like consolidated into something like that. And I totally don't mind paying, $15-20 to acquire something like that, where it's like a little treasure trove of, like expansion content or promos or that kind of thing. So
awesome.
The next one is a Rodney Smith related promo for Dead of Winter that you were talking about.
Yeah, so I don't know if we have this one. I just thought it was an interesting one.
I don't think we do. I don't think we have very many Dead of Winter promos.
I just thought no, we don't. Just interesting to bring up because it's interesting to see your people in the industry be made into the likeness of characters within the theme of a board game. So it was kind of funny and interesting, and like Rodney's from Canada, so a Mountie was his...
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I remember this one. Yeah, they made him into a Royal Mountie
in the Dead of Winter. So it was really cool just to be like,
no, we don't have that one.
We don't have that one, but I thought it was interesting to see because with sprinkled out through all games, you do have, BGG personalities. You have Dice Tower personalities. You have designer personalities that are all just sprinkled within the game, and those that know the people and get to see it, and they're just like, oh, that's kind of like a nice little hint there and here and there.
So actually that brings up kind of an interesting point where we divert in opinions. You'll have to tell us what you think. So Nick seems to like it when they bring in a little bit of reality.
A little bit. Now sometimes they go to a direction of like I've seen ones where it looks like just a picture of somebody. And it's like, that's not what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to get integrated. I
don't like any of those. I love Rodney. He's fantastic. And it would be fun to see him like pop up in your game. But to me, that almost breaks like your suspension of disbelief. Because it brings too much reality into the game. So promos that actually feature a specific person or personality or something like that, sometimes I don't really favor those at all. Even if it's people that I really like Rodney, or people that I admire for their contributions to the hobby or something like that. Even then, I'm like, I don't want to see that in my game because it's going to pull me out of the experience a little bit, and I don't want that to happen. So
okay. So next we have some of our favorite, and I really enjoy how these next promos we're going to mention come to you, is the novellas from Arkham Horror, the living card game.
Yeah, so Arkham Horror, the LCG, has some really neat extra promotional content that you can get your hands on. They've done some like Gen Con only events where if you went to Gen Con and were lucky enough to get a ticket, they're stupid hard to get, but if you were lucky enough to get a ticket to that event, you would get like a pack just for that particular event. And then you'd be able to integrate that into your game. They have a few of those. They have some just fun, strange ones. Like they have one called The Investigators of Barkham Horror, where everybody has been made into like a dog character. But we particularly appreciate the novellas, the promos that come with the novellas, because that's just such a fun way to get those promos. So every time that they release a series of promos, and they're only on their second set right now, but the first time they released 5 novellas within like the space of a year. And I'm hoping that that's what they do this time too. They've only put out 1 so far, but I'm hoping that they do the same thing where they release like 5 novellas, and every novella comes with a sort of an alternative art card.
I think it's almost a new investigator.
It may be a new investigator.
I don't know if they're, different alternate art, because I think they have their own set of what cards you can use.
I think you're right.
Because some characters have specific like cards they can only use, but I think in this case there are still that genre of cards that if this is this color, then you get to use these kind of cards. But it was just interesting because this is like kind of like the main character of the book.
Yeah. And so you get this backstory on the character itself, and then you get the promotional card that you can use to integrate into your game. So you almost get like this whole backstory that develops outside of the game because it comes through this book that you read. And it's just been fun. The writing is pretty well done. They're short, they're simple, but they're a lot of fun. I think we've talked about them on the show probably before. But I think you're right. This is definitely one of the funnest ways to acquire a promo is you get these books and then those promos are inside and you can read the book or not. I know some people don't even care to read the books. They just want the promos, but I actually really enjoy the books, and then integrating those promos into the game itself can be really fun too. Yeah. Especially because you have that, that sort of background information on that investigator.
Like makes you more immersed when you play the character because you know more of the backstory.
Yeah, exactly. Next, we're going to talk about the game Mystic Vale. Mystic Vale has actually, the creators of Mystic Vale have done a phenomenal job of releasing promotional content. They've had a lot of it, and they've had really fun ways to acquire it. So one of the things that they did a few years back was they had an event kit that they released called the Spirits of the Wild. And if you were lucky enough to have your local game store get a copy of the event kit or multiple copies and arrange an event, then you could play through this event, and as you played, you could earn promos. And they've actually done 2 event kits like this. The second one was called Havens. That's what the second one was called, and it was kind of similar in style. But I really liked the one from Spirits of the Wild because what they did was they included these little books called lore books. And every player who wanted to participate in the event received a lore book. And the lore book had in it stickers, which you would take off of the pages of the lore book and then place onto areas of the lore book to indicate that you had accomplished some sort of goal. Like if you were able to get your entire field planted with no decay, or without spoiling, then you got to take one of those stickers and put it on something that was basically like, okay, you've achieved that. And the achievements, the way it was supposed to work was if your store ran it the way that they had intended, was that you would get the stickers for each achievement in a section, and then if you completed that section, you would earn these promotional tokens, which you could use to help you track the spirit symbols on your cards when you're actually playing like any regular game of Mystic Vale. So there were actually these really nice wooden tokens that you could integrate into any future game of Mystic Vale as like a helper item, but you earned them through this really fun, neat sort of mini campaign, and that was really, really fun. I thought that was a neat sort of promotional item and a neat event, or a neat way to sort of earn those. I thought it was really fun.
Yeah, definitely.
They have a lot of other promotional items available for Mystic Vale too. They have a lot of advancements and veils, and they've done a few other things here and there too. So they've done a really good job with those. I just think that the Spirits of the Wild one was really, really fun, very well presented.
And I know we're not talking about upgrades, but we did just order some sweet upgrades.
And I am so excited about them, y'all. We have like basically everything ever for Mystic Vale except for the black chip upgrades for the what are those crystals called? The Victory Point crystals. The Victory Point crystals, if you're familiar with the game at all, you know that there's two different types of victory points in the game. One are like these blue victory points that when you play a card that has a blue victory point chip on there, you can go into the supply and get blue victory points chips. And those, that's an end of game timer. So like when the pile's depleted, that triggers the end of the game. And then it's also like a way for you to add up all of your points. And there are other points that are on the cards and stuff like that too. But these you actually like physically take and put in front of you. And that has been the case since the beginning of the game. But throughout the course of the expansions that have come out, they've also added a new type of victory point, which are black victory point crystals. And those are actually worth negative points. So again, you have to reach into a pile and pick out these negative victory point tokens and leave them in front of you. And if you can't get rid of them by the end of the game, they're worth negative victory points. And again, there's other ways to lose victory points on the cards too, but this is the only physical thing that you have to track like this. That's not directly printed onto the card or something like that. So when BGG did the blue crystal upgrades, we immediately bought those. They're these really cool, clear, flat, almost like discs, but they're shaped and they have the victory point symbol lasered, maybe not lasered, maybe screen printed. I don't really know what it would be, but they're really pretty. They're really, really sturdy. They're really solid. And they just elevate the game experience just a little bit, right? But so I was really excited about those when they came out with them. We got them right away. And when BGG announced that they were going to do the black victory points, I was like, yes! I've been saying for a couple years now that our game is really nice to have the victory point ones upgraded, but without the black victory point ones upgraded, it's kind of only a half situation, And we just ordered a set of the black ones. So I'm very, very excited about those. All right, so the last one that I'm going to talk about is some promotional items for a game called Happy Pigs. They had a couple different promotional items for Happy Pigs that were all alternate art animals that you could include in your game instead of the pigs. So the game itself is this game where you have these pigs that you are sort of growing into larger and larger pigs, and eventually you're selling them at market. And you're trying to get your pig to be the right size and, in time to go to market at the right time and that kind of stuff. So the way that they facilitate the different sizing or the growth of the pigs is that you start with a really tiny little pig, and then he gets a little bit bigger, and then a little bit bigger, and a little bit bigger. And they have different tiles for each of those pig sizes. And there's a little bit of a spatial puzzle aspect to it as well, because you have a certain sized paddock, and you can only fit so many pigs in the paddock. And if you grow a pig and he goes from one size to the next, and then you have to figure out how to put him back in your paddock. So there are all these pigs, and they're just these square shapes that just get bigger and bigger and bigger for each pig size. And the pigs themselves are these cube-like little pigs. They're shaped like little cubes. And on the tile, the art itself is cube-shaped. And so they released several different types of alternate art animals that also come in that sort of blockish style art. And they had ducks and penguins, which they sold separately or gave away separately at conventions. And then they also had one pack that contained a bunch of different farm animals like chickens, sheep, and cows, I believe. And it's just kind of a fun little barnyard animal collection set of promos. And it's kind of neat because even though the game is called Happy Pigs, you can have happy chickens or happy sheep or whatever. And it's just kind of fun. It's a nice random way. You can kind of mix and match the animals if you want to, because all that really matters is like the size of the cube. Yeah. Or you could like give each player their own animal faction or whatever. So it's just kind of a fun little upgrade to the game. And it was pretty generous as far as like a promotional item goes. There's quite a few of those tiles. It wasn't just like a card or two or like one promotional tile. It's actually like a whole set of those tiles. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And so last but not least, Onitama has by far my favorite promos because these are gold-leafed cards. So you'd see normally, for those of you that know what Onitama is, you have pieces on a neoprene mat and you're trying to capture the other master with these cards. These cards are like Ox, Crane, the stuff of the Zodiac. But so the basic cards are just kind of like they'll be red or they'll be blue, and then like at the beginning of the game, that's how you tell who gets to go first. If you draw the center card, that is the first one that you get to switch with one of your cards. If that is blue, then the blue player will go first. If it's red, the red player will go first. But then I think it was Gen Con. It had to be Gen Con or Origins.
It must have been Gen Con because they had a really beautiful booth. They had built like an actual Oriental style arch with copies of the game itself. And then they had this spread of these beautiful promo cards on the table underneath like that arch type thing. It was beautiful. Yeah. It must have been one of the larger conventions.
Yeah, it was just the second we saw it, we're just like, yes.
So they're these like gold leaf, like gold foil like cards that it's just
really
like the
pretty.
base game cards.
If you want to go
gorgeous.
Check them out, yeah, they're
Gorgeous.
probably on BGG. Someone took pictures of them, but
I'm sure they're beautiful.
They're beautiful cards.
All right.
And that's all the promos that we are talking about today. What promos do you guys like? What are promos?
Do you think promos are trash and you don't need them in your game?
Do you think promos are too expensive? Do you think they're too cheap? Like, what are your opinions on promos? Do you think upgrades are promos?
We didn't even talk about it, but I know that there's a whole section of beliefs about whether or not promos should be promotional items that are free or whether or not people should be able to pay to get the promotional items that they want. I personally don't mind paying a little bit of money to get a promo that I want. I have a lot of fun tracking down promos when I go to conventions, but I also know that I get to go to a lot more conventions than some people do. So if you never get to go to a convention and they're not for sale, well, how are you supposed to be able to get them?
Yeah, because if it's a promotional item at a convention, then sometimes you can get it for next to nothing or free, but then when you're getting it secondhand or from a store or from someone that's selling it or giving away, they're like, okay, well, I'm not giving it away, but getting rid of it in a way of like exchange of currency or other promos, it's like, okay, then that cost me something. Yeah. So it's like,
so do you think that you're okay with it costing something? Do you want them to be always free all the time? Do you think that they are strictly reserved for if you buy a game at your friendly local game store or go to a convention, you should be able to get a promo there? What do you think?
Does it entice you when there are promos attached when you buy from your friendly local game store? Does that happen at your friendly local game store? Or what kind of promos do you think should be free, and promos that you think is a miniature worth paying for? Is a card worth paying for? Or do you think like, hey, a card, but you gotta think your company has to press that out, and I get promotional item, but
what do you
tell us
think?
in the comments. Yeah.
What do you think? We are going to give away 3 promotional items today. So we are going to give these away by whatever method you choose.
Yes, so you just be subscribed to Meeples on the Ground, and that's it. As long as you're subscribed and comment.
I was going to say, do you need to like or comment the video or anything like that?
Like and comment the video. Mostly just please comment, because that will show who are the people that are going to, you have to be subscribed and...
Okay, that's the deal.
Comment. There's the deal.
Subscribe to Meeples on the Ground on YouTube and comment on this video telling us what your favorite promo item is, or if you think that promos are trash. But if you are commenting that, I'm going to assume you don't want one of these. But let's see what we have. Okay, so we've got a Your Full promo tile to include with the game New York Slice. We have a Giggles the Clown standee that you can include with your Dead of Winter or Dead of Winter Crossroads?
Yes.
Crossroads titles. He also comes with a Crossroads card as well. And finally, we have this pack of Dice Tower Towns and the Jackrabbit Railroad for one of my favorite games.
Very adorable.
Raccoon Tycoon. And the reason that we're giving this away is because I actually bought this from someone online. And when I received it, I said, this looks familiar. And I went and looked and we already had those promos in our game. So that's why we're giving away the Raccoon Tycoon promos that I just bought. We're just going to give them to you.
Hey.
So like the video, subscribe to Meeples on the Ground, tell us in the comments below what you think of promos, and if you have a preference of which of these that you would like to win. And until next time.
Yeah, bye.